of Canadians.
Climbing at 8,000 feet, experts say the Boeing 737 passenger jet could have been mistaken for an incoming U.S. missile or attacking plane. The 176 on board didn't stand a chance. U.S. officials believe a Russian-made SA-15 Gauntlet fired 2 missiles. Iran likely had their air defenses on high alert in the hours after their attack on U.S. bases in Iraq.
Fox's Leland Vittert. President Trump chose not to mention the plane during his rally Thursday night in Ohio, instead focusing on his orders to kill Iranian General Soleimani.
He was a bad guy. He was a bloodthirsty terror, and he's no longer a terror. He's dead.
The president said by killing Soleimani, he prevented another Benghazi-like attack, and he ordered Soleimani be killed as quickly as possible because the president says he did not have time to call up Nancy Pelosi and wait a couple days to discuss it, saying Soleimani was on the move and planning other attacks.
Fox's Matt Finn. The House focusing on the president's actions towards Iran as it passed a war powers resolution to limit those actions. Republicans Matt Gaetz and Mark Meadows coming down on opposite side of the votes.
This war powers resolution was worthy of support because it did not criticize the president. It did not say he was wrong in killing Soleimani.
With a non-binding resolution that is nothing more than a press release, Madam Speaker, it has no effect. It doesn't do anything.
And we're getting reports of unidentified planes striking targets in Syria near Israel this morning, possibly by pro-Iranian militia. America's listening to Fox News.
Yikes, are those Christmas bills coming in already? Those high-interest credit cards at 16, 18, even 24%? Well, we have a New Year's solution for you. A Bank Pacific personal loan with rates as low as 4.65% to pay off those expensive credit cards. It's easy, it's fast, and it's as low as 4.65% APR.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal credit opportunity lender as low as 4.65%. Conditions apply.
Mezco Chamorro Fusion Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel Tumon is now serving your favorite daily specials. Come one, come all. Enjoy your Monday with that savory caron pica. Your Tuesday with your one and only candied salmon. Stroll by on Wednesday to try that local-style oxtail caro. Or Thursday if you're feeling that pan-crisp pork belly served over roasted sweet potato mash. And don't forget that misoyaki black cod with garlic mashed potatoes on Fridays. Busy at work and still want your fix? Call us at 969-2652 for your takeout order.
Disgraced Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein loses his bid to get a new judge for his trial.
The judge in the Harvey Weinstein sexual assault trial denied defense lawyers' request for recusal because of comments he made on the former mogul's cell phone use. As jury selection in his rape trial continued, Weinstein's lawyers called the judge's comments about Weinstein's cell phone use prejudicial and inflammatory. Burke said, "Let me first just state the obvious. There's nothing prejudicial or inflammatory for scolding a recalcitrant defendant for violating a court order multiple times," adding Weinstein had been using a cell phone in court and was defiant and challenging the court officers when asked to put away his phone. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
Cell phones getting attention in Vermont, but for a different reason.
Democratic State Senator John Rogers has introduced a new bill that would ban the use of cell phones by anyone under the age of 21. And get this, penalties include up to a year in prison, a $1,000 fine, or both. Rogers contends young people are too immature to use cell phones, citing the role the devices play in fatal car crashes, not to mention cyberbullying. But after all that, Rogers says he may not even vote for his own bill, admitting he has no delusions that it's going to pass. He says he just wanted to make a point. Tom Rigotti, Fox News.
Tiger Woods announces his return to the links for a shot at a record-setting win.
He will make his 2020 debut later this month at the Farmers Insurance Open. The tournament begins January 23rd at Torrey Pines, a venue where Woods has won 8 times in his storied career, including the 2008 U.S. Open. He last came away victorious at the San Diego venue in 2013. This event would be Woods' second of this PGA Tour season, winning the Zozo Championship in October for his record-tying 82nd career victory. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And stocks rise to a record. The Dow up 211 points to just below 29,000. I'm Carmen Roberts. This is Fox News.
It's hard to believe, but Security Title is 20 years old. Reaching this milestone is a clear testament to the hard work of our employees, who are as passionate about our work as we are about our community. We are most grateful for the realtors, lenders, attorneys, investors, and the buyers and sellers we serve. They are the reason our doors have been open for 20 years. Security Title looks back with gratitude for the past 20 years and looks forward with optimism to the next 20. Thank you, Guam.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Not today, not tomorrow, not Sunday, not ever. I have a little piece here dealing with some of our favorite folks, the Hollywood elite. All of those people out there in California and Hollywood who make their livings pretending to be someone else and then use their fame and riches to tell us how we ought to think about important issues like abortion, gun control, marriage, etc. And, of course, almost all of the elites, the Hollywood elites especially, are very much against that which we hold almost sacred. That would be the Second Amendment. So whenever we can catch somebody like that in an act of hypocrisy, it's certainly worth a little time. So I've got an article here by a gentleman named A.W.R. Hawkins. And this article ran in Breitbart.com. It's entitled, Anti-Gun Hollywood Steps Up Arm Protection for Golden Globes. Actors and actresses in anti-gun Hollywood will be surrounded by armed security on Sunday. That was last Sunday, of course, as they attend the 77th Annual Golden Globes. New York Daily News reports Beverly Hills Police Department Captain Michael Hill saying, we have a robust security plan that includes assistance from our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners. Additionally, we will be using the most contemporary technologies in an attempt to secure the ceremony, to ensure the ceremony is held without incident. And Variety quotes Beverly Hills Police Lieutenant Robert Maycock, noting that the U.S. strike against Iran has not altered the security plan. Rather, he noted that security is similar to what it was last year. Breitbart News reported that 2019 security included barricades, bomb-sniffing dogs, armed guards, LAPD officers, and numerous security checkpoints for attendees as they arrive for the Golden Globes. Golden Globe security has been high level for many years. Breitbart News noted that the January 8, 2017 Golden Globes were surrounded by good guys with guns and body armor. Now, I wonder if they issued these Hollywood elites blindfolds as they walk past these good guys with guns so that they wouldn't be triggered by the horrible sight of these people carrying guns. Oh, my goodness. There were also security dogs, SWAT, and special FBI teams taking part in security. Breitbart noted that Matt Damon was at the 2017 awards, the very Matt Damon who made millions of dollars using guns in the Bourne, B-O-U-R-N-E, Bourne film series, yet called for an Australia-like gun ban for the rest of America. Other gun controllers, including Jessica Chastain and Ryan Reynolds were also in attendance, enjoying the benefits of good guys with guns while fighting off screen to limit those benefits for average Americans. How dare we? How dare we think that we would be entitled to the same thing as the Hollywood elites? The 2016 Golden Globes featured security personnel wearing tactical gear and carrying handguns and AR-15s. Whoa! Assault weapons with high-capacity magazines. This is shocking. Weapons that look very similar to civilian guns. So many Hollywood actors and actresses want to bar law-abiding citizens from owning. Throughout 2019, Hollywood celebrities have reacted to criminal use of firearms by calling for more gun controls across the board. For example, following the July 28 Garlic Festival attack in Gilroy, California, actors John Leguizamo, Billy Baldwin, and Bradley Whitford all voiced gun control rhetoric. Following a November 14, 2019 shooting at Saugus High School in Santa Clarita, actress Deborah Messing tweeted for gun control and made sure to include a shout-out to Michael Bloomberg-funded Moms Demand Action. So there you have it. You know, the gun grabbers. The gun grabbers don't want anybody to have guns except people protecting them. That's different. You know, we can distinguish that one on the facts. The first situation is about other people. The second is about them. So, Dr. Tom Poole, wow. You know, I thought I'd get to Dr. Poole. Later on when we were talking about, what's his name, Pacelli, and importation of birds and things like that. But what a wonderful way to start an episode of Tall Tales with Dr. Tom Poole on the line. Good afternoon, Doc.
Good afternoon, Judge. Thank you. We can talk about Mr. Pacell also. And by the way, that is how he pronounces it. He corrected me when I said Pacelli, but he pronounces it Pacell. But I wanted to talk to you about, you were talking about hypocrisy, and I just saw something interesting I wanted to share. And that is, you know, the media and the Democrats are just so outraged by the death of General Soleimani. And it was interesting to note that President Obama authorized 571 drone strikes that killed at least 3,792 people, including 2 American citizens who were specifically targeted. And what, you know, there was Anwar, what was his last name? Gosh, I can't remember his name. The American, you know, sheikh.
Yeah.
And Anwar, I can't remember his name. Anyway, and then 2 weeks later, they took out his 16-year-old son, also an American citizen. And throughout all of that, the media just, you know, as they would report it, it was just, hearts were just floating out of their eyes. It was just orgasmic bliss that Obama was doing it. But now that Trump has taken out this, just by all accounts, horrible terrorist, it's like he took out Gandhi while he was, you know, breastfeeding orphans or something. It's just this unbelievable tragedy. And the hypocrisy to me, I just find astounding.
Yeah, well, it's so typical of the left and the left part of the Democrat Party, which is almost all of the Democrats nowadays, Tom. That's what they do.
Well, and I almost could not believe those numbers, and so I checked it on Snopes, and I would invite anyone else that doubts the numbers about the drone strikes and the numbers killed and everything. It's right there in Snopes, and Snopes has always been pretty friendly to President Obama, so Snopes.com will verify those numbers. And I just find it amazing that you can, you know, keep a straight face and report your shock and horror over the death of General Soleimani. and yet have been quiet for all the rest of that.
Yeah, very good point.
What did you want to talk about with Mr. Purcell, if you want to get into that now?
Yeah, it's there was an article here that he has examined the records of the import of fowl imports, and they were quite sizable. And an article that has appeared in PNC News, he said he intends to provide those to the United States Attorney, showing that 2/3 of the 750 game fowl shipments to Guam over the past 3 years came from known cockfighters in the States. So as the saying goes, it looks like he's trying to make a federal case out of this.
Yes, I think so. He says that he has. There are apparently cockfighting magazines, and there are Guamanian importers who have their photographs and, I guess, stories or advertisements or something like that in these cockfighting magazines. And so there's no doubt these men who are importing, according to Mr. Purcell, are very clearly deeply involved in cockfighting, and he feels like for us to continue to authorize those imports, that we're clearly, aiding and abetting cockfighting, and that is the point he's trying to make, to Department of Agriculture. So this is just his opening salvo. He apparently has far he plans to go on this.
Well, it puts you in an awkward position. I remember talking to you about this right around the 20th when the federal law kicked in, and you kind of indicated that you were a little bit at sea with yourself, wondering as to the appropriate approach to signing permits to allow people to import birds.
Yes, sir. And fortunately, I don't sign those imports. Our director does the imports for the brood fowl, as they call them. And so I'm very happy to be out of that. But it's one of those things to where, and the point that I made to Mr. Purcell at the beginning of this is, I said, it could be that most of those, or maybe nearly all of those, or perhaps all of those imports are actually for cockfighting. I said, but I don't know that. I can't prove that. And of course, his comeback on that is that, well, here's the pictures of these guys in the cockfighting magazines. Mm-hmm. You know for sure these fellows are in it, and that is a good point, and I'm just very glad that I'm not on the other end of that, and that's something the director is going to have to sort out.
Now, correct me here if I'm off base, but I suspect that the control over the importation of animals is a sanitary regulation as opposed to a law enforcement regulation. Is that correct?
Well, it's Title IX, Judge. I'm not smart enough about how those are broken down as to whether it's, sanitary or law enforcement, but it's in Title IX of the Guam Code that has animal, but the actual import, the rules, it's covered by rules and regulations rather than Guam Code. And in the rules and regulations, I think it's Title 10 in the Guam Code that talks about animal importations, but the specific poultry thing is, I think, Title 9 of the rules and regulations. And they're pretty old. They haven't been amended in a long time. And you're right. It's basically talking about all of the sanitary requirements, that is, the health certification and vaccination and that sort of thing. It doesn't address cockfighting in any way.
Yeah. So it really, and of course, I was very critical of the blusterers in our government that had a year to get ready for this, and let 51 of the 52 weeks go by, and then when the 20th of December came along, engaged in some really high-powered blustering, as though this were a responsible approach for a public official in the face of a game changer like this. Did I lose you, Tom? I guess I did. Okay. Let's see, I got somebody on too.
That's Mr. Poole, Tom Poole,
Oh,
Dr. Poole.
Okay. So here you are on line two, Tom. I hope you're on line two. No, I got line 1 is ringing now. And the phone is beeping. Real. Does that mean we're being tapped?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cockfighters are tapping you, sir.
It's probably it's probably this guy Pacell that is tapping our lines here. See if he can find some incriminating statements here in Tall Tales.
Now he's on line 2, sir. See, it's play, catch, talk, Tom Pool.
Okay. Did I catch you, Tom? Maybe you could call him back, Real Joe Cruz. Maybe that would work better. Okay, Tom, so we've had trouble with our phones here. Yesterday, we didn't have any phone service at all. And today, we have you on 2 lines. First one, and then the other, one, and then the other. So the Real Joe Cruz, I've asked the Real Joe Cruz to call you back. Okay, now we've got you on line 1 again. Did it work this time, Tom?
No, sir. I called you back, but I kept calling through, and I'd get cut off. I'm not sure what was causing that.
Yeah, it's probably that guy Pacell that's doing this little cyber warfare, you know. Anyhow, so, yeah, I was very critical of our government officials. You know, they had a year to get ready for this. And they could have saved their blustering until the end after they had examined all these much harder questions. So, you know, I had a couple of different viewpoints on the whole cockfighting thing. One, I don't like the national government getting involved in making local law. Every state and territory should decide for itself if and how it wants to be cruel to animals. We don't need any help from Washington. Now, Congress does have the ability to regulate interstate commerce under Article 8, Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution. So if Congress decided to regulate the interstate shipment of game fowl, even I would say that's probably okay. And from what I've read, federal law outlawed the interstate shipment of game fowl going all the way back to 2002. So if Pacell is correct, it looks like he may have something that very much resembles a chicken that very much resembles a smoking gun.
Well, you know, that's a case you could make, particularly when you have pictures of the importers, you know, in these cockfighting magazines, as he says he has. I haven't seen these things, but as he's relayed to me, it's a little hard to deny that these birds aren't destined for that.
Yeah. Okay, so with respect to the territorial veterinarian, though, it's the call of the Director of Agriculture, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. Well, I'll be on her like a duck on a June bug then until we see where this is going to go.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for calling. What, 4 times, Tom?
Yes, sir, something like that.
Yeah, you're caught up for about the next 2 weeks if you don't really want to call.
Okay, thanks, Judge.
Thank you. So, yeah, that was Tom, what's his last name, Real Joe Cruz?
Pool, sir.
Tom Pool, yeah. Well, while I'm still dealing with this, before we go to Demi Cotney, I think it's fair at this point to let everybody out there know who have been engaging in bluster that may not be a really good idea, because I think this guy really means business. So, you know, when this first came out, you know, when it was first announced, well, this new federal law takes effect on the 20th of December. Oh, what are they going to send out here to enforce it? Well, I've been doing this ever since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. I ain't going to stop, and on and on and on. Well, I think this fella is pretty intent on doing something. And, you know, if you're talking about public activities, there are 2 concepts that I would just urge you to consider. There's breadth of feeling and there's depth of feeling. So let's talk about breadth of feeling. If you were to poll every person on Guam and ask them, what do you think about cockfighting? a whole lot of them probably would say, I don't care one way or the other. I just don't have any strong feelings about it. You'd have a small number who would have some depth of feeling. My grandfather taught me how to do it. How dare they tell me I can't fight my roosters? That's depth of feeling. So it appeared when Congress passed this law back a year ago that although there may have been some breadth of feeling, some people who didn't want to see cockfighting, not much depth of feeling. But this guy comes along here, this guy who I would pronounce Pacelli, Wayne Pacell, comes out here, and since we're dealing with animals, he comes out here and he's loaded for bear. You know, he's going to offer rewards. He's been through the records. He's going to go to the United States Attorney, and you'll recall this when this first came up. Who are they going to send out here to enforce this? My answer was, those people are already here. We got a United States Attorney. We've got a Federal Bureau of Investigation. We've got a Drug Enforcement Administration. So if he's able to present a compelling bundle of evidence to the United States Attorney, who said very plainly, if we have a violation, we'll do what we're supposed to do. This may not end well for those of you who are so intent on being gods and arrows that you think that you could kind of bluster your way through what Mr. Wayne Pacell has brought to the island. I'm not saying he's right. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying it'd be a real good idea to start paying attention to this, because I don't think he's going to give up and go home tomorrow. Okay, so we got an early start on the card thanks to Tom Poole. So now let's go to Zemi Ikram. So, you know, this is the time of the program where I look at the editorials of the two daily papers. I unmercifully criticize the Daily News for not having a local editorial, then go to the Post, and quite often award the coveted Blue Star to the Post, not on a default basis, but because they write some good editorials. Today was different. When I looked at the editorial page of the Daily News, I almost had to call 911. Yeah, I read it online, and I flipped to that page, and my heart. I thought I was having a heart attack because there's actually a local editorial in the Daily News. Wow. And the old saying is, you live long enough, you're liable to see almost anything. So today was the day. The Daily News had a local editorial. And wonder of wonders, since they would have seemed to have been so far out of practice, it's actually a pretty good editorial. And here's the title: How will the administration pay for the public safety plan? And they almost like they're borrowing a page from my book. When I hear about all these grandiose schemes, the first question I usually ask is, yeah, that's great, but who's going to pay for it? So here we go. On Monday, Governor Leon Guerrero and Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio announced the administration's public safety plan. It rests on 4 tenets: more police officers, fighting addiction, ending repeat crime, and addressing negligent parents. In the last decade, there's a quote, in the last decade alone, crimes like aggravated assault, rape, robbery, and theft increased by 41%. Drug-related crimes rose, and yet the number of uniformed police officers dropped 25% when compared to 2015, Tenorio said. While politicians bickered. Now, that seems to be one of the really important things that politicians do now. Yesterday, we had Tina and Michael Nicholas bickering over Bill 1365. And now the Daily News picks it up and says, Tenorio picked it up. While politicians bickered about what should be done and how we should pay for it, the system built to protect us drowned under a rising tide of crime. Wow, what a nice turn of phrase. Yeah, drowned under a rising tide of crime. The administration has committed to adding 100 new police officers by the end of 2020 and wants to build a Jigo police precinct, leveraging federal funds to make it happen. That's the way the new central precinct was constructed. The plan also calls for eliminating parole for violent criminals and those who have been convicted of sex crimes. In addition, Guam Homeland Security will work with the Guam Department of Education to strategically place cameras in public schools, Tenorio said, to prevent vandalism and burglaries. The administration also wants an automated island-wide traffic enforcement system and to conduct 100% digital screening of all containers entering the port. While the public safety plan is promising, it lacks one vital component: a clear way to pay for it all. Maybe we could just pretend it's money for the Manamku pursuant to the War Claims Act in Congress. Where will the money be found to pay for all the cameras at public school campuses and to cover installation costs and maintenance? The funding question needs to be asked for what will be needed to put together, install, run, and maintain an automated island-wide traffic enforcement system. And even with a private partner, money will be needed to ensure 100% screening of all port cargo. A private company won't do it out of the kindness of its heart. We eagerly await the administration to share how it will fund its public safety plan. Well, pretty good, you know. It gives us something to think about. It's got a hard edge. It holds people accountable. It has a call to action. Pretty good editorial. I guess after all that hard work wading through that editorial, I'm going to visit the Opera Carmen for a little while and then come back to the Post.
The holidays are here and the shopping frenzy begins. Protect yourself with these safe shopping tips. Consider shopping only with retailers you trust or do some research on other retailers you aren't familiar with before proceeding. Don't save your credit card information on retail websites and never make payments when using public Wi-Fi. Switch to cellular data or wait until you get to a secure network to make your purchases. These safe holiday banking tips are brought to you by Bank of Guam, the People's Bank, member FDIC.
From the start of the NFL football season, Point listeners have gotten together in friendly competition to battle it out in the Points NFL Pick'em contest. Along with weekly winners picking up great prizes, we have also awarded our grand prize winner, Art Hameister. Art correctly guessed 170 picks. Wow! Good enough for him to win a new iPhone from GTA. Congratulations, Art. Thanks to all who participated in the Points NFL Pick'em contest. Brought to you by Current Guam with special thanks to GTA.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So good editorial there, Daily News, and now we'll plunge into the Post editorial. And it's titled, "The Port Authority is not a private business. It should not enter into secret deals." Secret deals. On November 26, newly hired Port Authority Deputy General Manager Luis Baza signed a document that committed the government agency, which spends money from ratepayers and spends millions of dollars in federal grants, to keep the terms of a settlement agreement to rehire a fired manager confidential. Not a smart move down there, Port Authority, unless you think walking out into the pasture where Ferdinand is ambling about and waving a red flag in front of him. The port decided to rehire another former employee who was among the port managers and employees fired for their roles in the processing of a co-worker's fraudulent workers' comp claim. Port General Manager Rory Respicio has recused himself. Well, he said he did, but remember I told you I sent a sunshine law request, and what he sent back was a note that he delivered to the Civil Service Commission that said that Connie Jo Shinohara would take his place at the commission. And this was after Connie Jo Shinohara had resigned. So I'm curious about this recusal. A recusal ordinarily states it's the reason. In other words, if I were a judge, as an example, and the real Joe Cruz came before me, say on some kind of a criminal complaint, you got to use your imagination here, I would probably recuse myself, because if it were the real Joe Cruz, I'd probably throw the book at him. No, I wouldn't. Just kidding, real Joe Cruz. But I think you get the point that I'm making here. You know, so I would say I don't think that I could be impartial here or have a conflict of interest, or I have some prior knowledge of this matter, or have a personal interest in it. Just coming along and saying, oh, I recuse myself, just doesn't quite do it. But that's what he said. Port General Manager Rory Respicio has recused himself from the issue because of a conflict. Now, I don't know how the Post knows this. Maybe they are speculating. A conflict. One of the fired workers was his employer when he was a senator. So Baza is the signatory to the confidential settlement terms to rehire Leon Guerrero. It's worth noting that when Baza signed the confidential terms, he had been on the job for less than 2 weeks. His predecessor, Connie Jo Shinohara, resigned months after she had been tasked to determine whether the fired workers should or shouldn't be reinstated. We question why the board of directors and management of the port, a government entity and spender of public funds, including federal funds, committed to making the terms of the agreement confidential. And of course, join me here, real Joe Cruz, whenever you see something like this, you must stand back and shout this. Help me out here. What are they trying to hide? Okay, we'll try it again, all right? A government entity and spender of public funds, including federal funds, committed to making the terms of the agreement confidential.
What are they trying to hide?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I hope they heard that all the way down to APRA. What are you guys trying to hide down there? Some sneaky kind of deal? I wonder if when Baza and Leon Guerrero signed this, if they were under the table at the time they signed it. Yeah, I have this mental image. Baza is sitting at the table and Leon Guerrero comes in, counsel is there, and then they say, well, this is going to be a little different. We're going to do this under the table, okay? So let's all crawl under the table and then sign this, and we'll keep it confidential. The December 26 agreement states in part, the port agrees that, quote, the settlement shall remain undisclosed unless and until either party shall in good faith seek enforcement of the settlement agreement or otherwise is obligated to disclose pursuant to law or lawful order. Now the question here is, is a sunshine law request from Tall Tales, is that sufficient to obligate them to disclose this? I think we're going to find out. The port's legal counsel, Joseph McDonald, a former chief prosecutor and former champion of government transparency, former champion, has told the Post that disclosure could only occur if one of the parties is not complying with settlement terms and the other wanted to enforce those terms. If the port agreed to give back pay to Leon Guerrero, the amount and other terms that have an impact on the port's finances should be public record. Absolutely. Yeah. I wonder if they brought Joey Duenas in as a consultant on this one. So Joey could tell them all of the things that they shouldn't know as they go about doing this. Oh, nobody told me that. We have learned from previously available public records that the port has agreed to pay six-figure back pay to certain individuals who were fired and then somehow won their jobs back through technicalities. One example is now Agate Mayor Kevin Suswiku, whom the board fired because he wasn't qualified for the accountant job he was hired for. Although he didn't have an accounting degree, the 2-year marketing grad eventually was awarded years of back pay. And then there is Controller Jojo Guevara, who was among the fired group of 7 who was reinstated to the job from which he was fired and then awarded almost $400,000 in back pay. The port board and its management do not run a private business. They run a government agency. Their actions should be transparent and publicly accountable. Just as government workers' salaries, pay raises, government claims, and contracts are all public documents, so should any agreements where government employees are rehired and given back pay be public. The government shouldn't pick and choose when it wants to be transparent with island residents. Well, I couldn't agree more. I'm going to award the Blue Star in just a second here, but there's something else that I want to get your Law and Order notebooks out here, Real Joe. So when you're dealing with something like a breach of contract, let's say that A agrees to provide B with 20 pounds of Spam on a daily basis. And this goes on for a year. It's a 2-year contract. And then beginning in the 2nd year, A stops delivering Spam to B. And B sues A and says, because you didn't deliver that Spam, I lost business in the amount of about $400 a day. So measure my damages is $400 a day. Well, B would have a duty to mitigate damages in that situation. In this case, it would mean B would have a duty to go out and buy the Spam somewhere else. And if there was a difference in price, that would be the measure of damages. It's called the doctrine of mitigation of damages. So when an employee is fired and is reinstated with back pay, the employee has a duty to mitigate damages for all that time he was out of a job. He can't just stay home and watch reruns of Law and Order, although that's a pretty good thing to do if you got a little time on your hands. Now, he can't stay home and just watch reruns of Law and Order. He has a duty to go out and look for a job. He has a duty to go out and look for a job that's comparable to the job that he got fired from. And if he can't come up with some proofs that he tried, he doesn't get back pay. And then the other part of the doctrine of mitigation of damages is this. If during the time that he was fired, the employee got another job, let's say it wasn't comparable, and let's say that he got fired as an accountant at the port, And during the time, the period of his firing, got a job as a bookkeeper working for Crew's bookkeeping agency. Made less money than as an accountant, but all the money he made as a bookkeeper goes against his award of back pay. Again, it's called mitigation of damages. Okay, so I got another Joe on the line here, so I'm going to deal with another Joe and see who else do I have here, Real Joe Cruz. I've got Fred. Is this the real Fred? Hard to say. Okay, so another Joe, and then Fred, and then back to Demi Ekutney. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Hey there, Uncle Bob. I thought I was hearing different lines there for a minute. I wonder, is it premature to speculate as to the editorial? The question being, where will Governor Lou Leongrove find the money to fund these, what we would call her baby project, so to speak? I don't know. Do you recall there was the issue of surplus? Was that ever dealt with completely, or is it still an issue?
Well, about a month ago, yeah, we had like a $19 million surplus, but we were told, no, we can't spend that on something else. That has to stay there for deficit elimination. In other words, to pay for debts that we had accrued in prior years.
Unless of course, the administration has another good use for said fund.
Yeah.
Said money set aside, but I don't recall what was the understanding where the administration used to have the ability to move funds around.
Well,
do they still do that?
Their explanation was that if there is a deficit, they don't need any authority to pay down the past debts. That's their I don't completely agree with that, but that's their.
What about future expenditures, like say, for example?
That's their explanation of it.
What about future projects, like say the surveillance idea?
No, there would have to be. I would think there would have to be an appropriation or some kind of a federal grant or Section 30 money for that.
There was already in the past, the beginning of the previous year, there was the issue of money that was sent over to fund either a homeless shelter or a homeless help center, and because that fell through, and never made it through the Guam Housing Housing Corporation, or I'm not sure that's the title. So then the funds were sent back to the governor's office, I think. That's budget. There's two similar titles, VMR and another one similar to that. So this money was there until it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was, and I'm not sure. It came from the federal. The idea of it is it might have been compact impact money, for the intention being to assist with homeless shelters or help programs. But if the governor has a better use for it, they're leaving it to her discretion, so to speak. That's just one speculation, possibly, of where some of that funding might be coming from. But in any case, how do you feel about homeless help shelter, centers, Uncle Bob?
Well, I have my own idea of how we should go about doing it. That probably wouldn't be very popular, but maybe I'll pick that up at the end of the program. Okay, another Joe.
Sure. Yeah. And one last question. What if the cockfights were done with advanced technology, like no knives, gloves, and a bodysuit where they can figure out who got in the most hits? Then would that be more legal, or is Is it just illegal altogether, or is it just illegal because of the knives used?
Wouldn't that kind of cockfight, wouldn't that be like taking a shower with your swimming suit on, real Joe Cruz? I mean, another
There you
Joe.
go. Hey, thanks for your time. Thanks for your time, Uncle Bob. I hear the music.
All right.
If you've ever struggled for breath, you know what a scary experience it is. Whether you have asthma, emphysema, COPD, lung cancer, or another respiratory illness, the right medical treatment makes all the difference. GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic has the latest technology and respiratory equipment, staffed by world-class pulmonologists. Make an appointment today with GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic and start breathing easier. GRMC, where patients are partners.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Okay, so here we are back on the air again, and I've got Fred on the line, right? Good afternoon, Fred.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
So I was trying to find out how can I get a job in the government, get fired, and then get $500,000 in back pay? Is there a way?
Well, it seems
I'd like to do that too, and
seems to be pretty easy, doesn't it, Fred?
yeah. So I'm trying to find out, maybe get fired for insubordination, maybe call it a racial firing, and then go in, get reinstated, and get back pay. Yeah, right.
Well, from all the news that I've dealt with here in the last few days, I think the only thing necessary to do that is that you don't smoke marijuana before you go and apply for the job, because then you wouldn't get hired.
I don't smoke marijuana, so it's okay. I guess I'll win.
Then you got a chance. You got a shot at it, Fred.
I mean, this is like highway robbery in broad daylight, and the government lets it happen.
Makes it happen. In this case.
Ridiculous. And then the other thing I was reading in the paper about the mayor of Jotnia, he's actually allowed to form his council for his village while he is in the situation he's in.
Yeah.
Why doesn't Angel Sablan take care of that? Isn't he should be the one appointing who's going to handle that village, not someone who is in a situation and who needs to be, proven innocent.
Well, my recommendation was that position should have been declared vacant.
Kind of odd, right?
Could have been declared vacant.
In jail, and you get to figure out. You still have the luxury to figure out all that.
Yeah. My analysis was that position should have been declared vacant long ago, and we should have had election to fill it. But
well, the Angel Sablan could have appointed someone to handle that village.
Well, I don't know.
Since he's the head of the mayors.
I don't know how excited I'd get about that either, to tell you the truth.
And then you have all this surplus money, and we can't help GMH out with it. Healthcare is suffering, and people every day are suffering. Each second, people are going into that hospital and getting a 50-50 chance. It's like, I don't know, Let's Make a Deal, or The Price is Right, or what are those shows called? Is there a show called 50-50 Chance?
I'm actually pretty healthy right now for an old guy, but you know what my secret to good health is? I never go to Guam Memorial Hospital.
Yeah, just kind of self-heal and
stay
over the counter and all that kind of stuff.
Stay away from it, yeah.
But, I mean, everyone's just milking the government. The government's letting them, and private citizens are just suffering. It's every man for himself, pretty much. That's the style.
True enough, Fred.
And me and you're just going to talk about it. Nothing's going to happen. Well, just people embezzle money.
Well, never underestimate the power of the international radio listening audience at Tall Tales, Fred, which you have become a part of. So thanks a lot for calling, Fred.
So again, if you know any way of all us public, or I mean private citizens can get back pay and the hookups, let us know on Tall Tales, please.
I'll do it, Fred. Good idea. Thank you. Oh, shucks, I hung up on our Carl. Call back, our Carl. Yeah, I had a call from our Carl, and I thought that I was ending the call with Fred, and it was actually our Carl. So, yeah, there he is. Good afternoon, our Carl.
Hey, Bob. Good afternoon. Yeah, I know we're facing the top of the hour, but this won't take long. Yeah, you know, in light of all the needs we have in the community, you know, especially GMH, you know, where lives hang in the balance, in light of all the money we see going up in smoke, figuratively, I've got a time-saving suggestion. Why not just have the legislature gather all the money, you know, these hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars that were wasted into a big pile in the middle of a field, invite the people of Guam to gather around, douse all that money with gasoline, and set it on fire. Just save us the time.
And the aggravation, huh?
Well, let's do it. Let's just do it literally. I mean, I just shake my head at you know, the things going on. It's just, it amazes me. It really does.
Well,
Anyway,
especially this port thing, you know, going all the way back to the first meeting that Rory had with his board. He telegraphed his moves, and he really wanted to settle this case, and he really wanted to settle YTK, and the hell with the ratepayers.
Yeah. In light of all the large needs we have in the community, all this stuff is a really, really bad look. You know, the going to Hawaii, you know, 100 people. You know, when we're having all these problems that desperately need money to solve, you know, the way they're just burning through money, it's amazing. Anyway, Bob, I'll keep listening. Very interesting show. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for calling, our Carl.
All right.
Okay, so yeah, just a few minutes here before the big halftime show. So the Daily News did well, you know, and the Daily News editorial is blue star quality, no question about it. But the Post today hit a home run with his editorial on the port and the machinations of the management of the recused general manager and the settlement and you know, Real Joe Cruz.
Yep.
They entered into a settlement agreement, but they claim that it's private and no one can see it. What are they trying to hide? Yeah. So today, and also kudos to the Post, because I'll get to it on the card, but they did some really good reporting on this whole thing that really kind of sheds a lot of light on what happened down there. Not the complete picture, but a pretty nice picture of what we're dealing with down at the port. So I'm going to just kind of put a check mark here on the Daily News editorial showing that I saw it and that it was actually blue star quality, but unfortunately the Daily News editorial was probably a hard hit double, right? A double to center field, but the Post hit it out of the park. So blue star goes to the Post.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
They would have leaked the attack. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. That's what President Trump believes the Democrats would have done if he had told them he was going to kill Iranian General Soleimani.
We have Bernie and Nancy Pelosi. We have them all. They're all trying to say, how dare you take him out that way? You should get permission from Congress. You should come in and tell us what you want to do. You should come in and tell us.
The president at a rally Thursday night in Toledo, Ohio, capitalizing on his order to take out Iran's top general. He slammed House Democrats for passing a war powers resolution earlier in the day. Speaker Pelosi leading that action to try and prevent the president from starting a war with Iran. The non-binding resolution asserts the president must have congressional approval for further action against Iran, except in situations of imminent danger.
With the president's actions last week, he endangered our servicemen and women, our diplomats.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the airstrike against an Iranian general in Iraq was provocative and disproportionate.
Fox's Jared Halpern. The Pentagon says the plane that crashed in Tehran that night was shot down by an Iranian missile.
The SA-15 and other Russian-made missile systems are programmed to lock onto anything metal that looks like a missile. The Ukrainian civilian airliner crashed 2 minutes after takeoff while still in its ascent. On radar, it easily could have been mistaken for an incoming missile. The SA-15 and air defense systems like it have a manual and automatic mode. If in automatic mode, it could have fired without a human being ordering the strike. The Iranians would likely turn on their missile defense systems, expecting a U.S. response. Protecting its airport and strategic locations in Tehran would be expected.
All 176 people on board died. America's listening to Fox News.
Want to grow your business? Start a new venture? Or stay ahead of the competition? You can. With Docomo Pacific Smart Business Solutions tailored to your specific needs and ambitions, you can do it all. Partner with a network with best-in-class network coverage, state-of-the-art communication platforms, and a team dedicated to providing you with premium support. Call 688-2677 to start your journey to success today. Docomo Pacific Business, delivering your future today.
At the mall, as you enjoy your shopping, dining, or entertainment. You could also win 3 great cars from Atkins Kroll and thousands of prizes in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game. Present your mall receipts and have a chance to win the renowned performance Chevrolet Camaro, the unapologetic rugged Toyota 4Runner, or the head-turning Lexus ES350 Luxury. Getaways to Manila, courtesy of Philippine Airlines, plus prizes from Foot Locker and Burger King. The more you shop, the more chance to win in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game.
A man who helped organize the infamous white nationalist rally in Virginia gets out of jail.
Elliot Klein is once again out from behind bars after being jailed earlier this week. A judge sent the white nationalist leader to the slammer on Monday over allegations he refused to comply with court orders related to a federal lawsuit. It alleges he violently conspired with other racists online as they organized the 2017 Charlottesville rally. One neo-Nazi ultimately plowed his car into a group of several counter-protesters, killing one young woman and injuring several others. Tom Graham, Fox News.
Coyotes may be on the loose in downtown Chicago. Animal Control captured one Thursday night, and the hunt's on to find the other. Comes after 2 reported attacks, including one in which people had to rescue a 6-year-old boy who was bitten in the head. A biologist with the Urban Coyote Research Project says if the animals are indeed coyotes, it would be the first time in the state one's attacked a human. Jeopardy keeps racking up the ratings.
The second night of Jeopardy's Greatest of All Time was even better than the first in the ratings. The dream matchup between Ken Jennings, James Holzhauer, and Brad Rutter averaged 14.824 million total viewers, up from 14.367 million in the key demo, 18 to 49. The show was slightly down.
James, you are 200 points shy. What a game.
Host Alex Trebek recently spoke about his battle with pancreatic cancer at the Television Critics Association press tour, saying some days are better than others, adding, I have a cold that seems to be going around, but this is the second time I've had one in the past month and a half. They've gotten me off of one of my chemo drugs, which were killing me. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
And Grubhub says it is not for sale, despite reports to the contrary. A spokesman for the Food ordering business says the company's consulted advisors about a broad range of issues, but no plans for a sale. I'm Carmen Roberts. This is Fox News.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Cocoa Coffee Company is now available at Circle K. Single origin coffee beans carefully sourced and locally roasted to give you the freshest cup of coffee Guam has to offer. Grab a cup that's brewed every 30 minutes or purchase a bag of the locally roasted whole beans. Flavors now serving: light medium roasted Ethiopia and medium dark roasted Jamaican Blue Mountain. Exclusively available at Circle K. With every Cocoa Coffee Company purchase, a portion of the proceeds will go towards the Cocoa Recovery Program.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So, that exciting halftime show we have every day at 1700 just gets better and better every time I see it. Since that was a halftime show, this is now the second half of Tall Tales. Unfortunately, the last episode of Tall Tales this week, which means it's going to be really tough on the Real Joe Cruz and I for the next couple days without a Tall Tales, which is the most enjoyable part of our lives. We'll have to do without it until Monday, but we'll be back at 4 o'clock Monday afternoon, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, we will, sir.
Yeah, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, right?
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the card. The first item on the card here is the settler versus the Port Authority of Guam ratepayers. And then I've got Pacelli versus Gov Guam, which I pretty much went through with Tom Poole, but I might just brush it up a little bit. And then I've got Robert Underwood versus us, with additional two parties, Kelly Marsh Titano or Marsha Kelly or whatever, and Bernard Punzelon. And then I've got... I might just touch on the Chamorro Land Trust Commission versus Chamorros, Jim Moylan versus professional politicians, and MSN versus Tina. This is the bickering item. But let's go to the settler versus ratepayers. This really picks up on the editorial, or actually it's the other way around. The editorial really picks up on this news item, and it's a nice job of reporting by the reporter at the Post on this one. And the title of the article is Rehired Port Planners Pay Backdated Years. The Port Authority of Guam backdated 8 years of personnel documents that authorized, after the fact, more than $360,000 in back pay to one of the 7 fired Port Authority of Guam employees over an alleged fraudulent workers' comp claim. The documents, released to the Guam Daily Post under a Freedom of Information Act request, offer a peek into the financial impact to the government agency as a result of a settlement agreement to reinstate Leon Guerrero. Now, there was a settlement agreement there. Do you know what the settlement agreement provided for, Real Joe Cruz?
No, sir.
Why is it that you don't know?
I didn't ask.
Is the agreement public?
It's not.
Is it confidential?
Yes, sir. It's a personal matter.
It's confidential, right? Well, you know what? When I see stuff like this, you know what my first question is?
What, sir? What are they trying to hide?
Yeah.
What are they hiding from us?
Yeah, what are they trying to hide? Yeah. So, the settlement agreement to reinstate Leon Guerrero was signed December 26, 2019, less than 2 weeks after Luis Baza, a former Civil Service Commission commissioner, was hired as Deputy General Manager at the fort, following the resignation of Connie Jo Shinohara. Shinohara had been tasked to determine whether the fired workers should or shouldn't be reinstated. The December 26 agreement, which was authorized by the port, the Port Board of Directors. There's no, Real Joe Cruz, there's no Board of Directors.
There isn't?
Well, actually, wait a minute. There is a Port Board of Directors, yeah. Was authorized by the Port Board of Directors, states in part, the port agrees that the, quote, settlement shall remain undisclosed unless and until either party shall in good faith seek enforcement of the settlement agreement or otherwise is obligated to disclose pursuant to law or lawful order. And that gets us right back to what we were just talking about a minute ago, right?
What are they
trying to hide? Yeah. The port's legal counsel, Joseph McDonald, a former chief prosecutor who pursued the government's case against the secret meeting, has told the Post that the disclosure against the secret meeting. This is a little bit confusing. Not this secret meeting, but another secret meeting has told the Post that the disclosure could only occur if one of the parties is not complying with the settlement terms and the other wanted to enforce those terms. Under a Freedom of Information Act request, the port on Thursday released personnel documents giving pay adjustments to Leon Guerrero from 2012 through January 2020. The 7 port workers were fired in the latter part of 2012. Another one of the 7, Controller Jojo Garcia, was awarded almost $400,000 in back pay. The backdated documents signed by the port deputy general manager, which are called notices of personnel action, and then there's a list of the documents. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 documents, the last one of which was signed on January 6th, effective January 6th, and it's a job reinstatement. So there are some big numbers there in all of these notices of personnel action. A notice of personnel action is what a lot of folks refer to as a GG1, right? So the way the government personnel system works, if a person is to be promoted, his director would sign a paper called Request for Personnel Action. In a line agency, that request goes to the Department of Administration. A paper called Notice of Personnel Action is prepared for the director's signature in about 7 copies, one of which goes to the payroll division, and that causes the pay to increase or a check to issue or whatever. So that's what happened here. So although the agreement is confidential, government statutory law says you can't keep an employee's salary secret. Otherwise, I suspect they would have, because this is not the kind of thing that is really good public relations for the port, that they settled a case that was at the Civil Service Commission, and it's going to cost ratepayers $360,000. Of course, if the case had gone to the Civil Service Commission and the port had prevailed, it wouldn't cost us anything. So a little earlier in the program, I explained the doctrine of mitigation of damages to our international radio listening audience. So if Leon Guerrero is entitled to back pay for all the time that she was out, she had a duty to mitigate damages. And if she didn't mitigate damages, then she's not entitled to any back pay. Mitigate damages means go out and look for a comparable position. So if she was a planner work coordinator, she should have been out looking around the whole island for a planner work coordinator job. And if she didn't do that, and if she can't prove it up, then she's not entitled to back pay. And if she took another job, if she took a job as an Uber driver during the time of her termination, whatever she made on that other job is subtracted from her back pay. But since all we've got here is the raw data of how much she was paid, and we can't see the settlement agreement, we don't know if she was required to mitigate damages. And if she weren't required to mitigate damages, then somebody else should get fired. Because that's the way the law works. So to not require mitigation or proof of mitigation of damages, or not subtract the amount of mitigated damages from the award, is wasting your money, Real Joe Cruz. What do you think of that?
I don't think anything's going to happen to anybody, sir.
You don't, huh?
No. Law or no law, it's sad.
Well, I don't know. Something's going to happen to them. That is, they're going to get raked over the coals on tall tales, I'll tell you that. But this whole thing was you know, if you play basketball, when you're playing basketball and you're dribbling the ball down the court, you use head fakes and even the way you manipulate your eyes and your hands so that the defender doesn't know exactly what you're going to do. And if you don't do that, and the defender is able to see that you're going to cut to your left and try to shoot a layup, you are said to have telegraphed your play. Well, Rory telegraphed his play from the very beginning. When he went to the Civil Service Commission, I'm sorry, not the Civil Service Commission, but when he went to the first meeting of the Port Board of Directors and told them that he was appointing Connie Jo Brennan Shinohara, to set up a task force to examine the justice of the termination of the Port 7. And at the same time, he said, we got to get rid of Mike Phillips, because you remember Mike Phillips was the attorney for the port at that time, who has steadfastly maintained that the terminations were good terminations. This all came up in the confirmation of Dan Tydenko, who Mary Torres sought to trash at the hearing, and Mike Phillips came out and said, no, these people did some bad things and they deserve to be fired. So obviously Phillips had to go. So Phillips is gone. He was replaced by McDonald, who apparently handled one of these open government cases. And at the same time, the same meeting, Rory said that he had talked with Champ Calvo about settling the YTK case. So if I were a really cynical person, which of course I am, I might pay special attention to what Joanne Brown said about Rory's machinations here concerning the Port 7. She said it's nothing but a political payoff. And I suspect that she's saying the same thing today, only she's probably hollering it's nothing but a political payoff, not to mention probably hollering, what do they got to hide? So this whole Port 7 rehiring, reinstatement, settlement agreement, confidential documents doesn't look good at all. And it's the kind of thing that here on Tall Tales we say, well, let's just give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's reach out to Rory. He probably has some good reasons for doing this. It's not the Tall Tales approach. So I would hope that our public auditor takes his auditing, goes down there with his green eye shade and his sleeve garters, and really digs into this matter at the port, because, you know, the port is right on the ocean, Real Joe Cruz, but that's not the reason that something smells fishy here. Okay, Fred wanted to ride the had so much fun he wanted to ride the merry-go-round again? Okay, Fred, you could ride the merry-go-round again, use the same ticket you used last time.
Yeah, since we're, about money and how it's being wasted. How about that, the QC that hotels and I think it's hotels, insurance companies are given, which cost us $65 million in lost revenue. What about that?
Well, I'll comment on that, but Fred, I'll comment on that, but I want to divide it into two subjects: hotels and insurance companies. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I understand the reason behind the QCs for the hotels, and as a general principle, I think it's a good idea, because the idea behind the QCs is to attract businesses here that might not otherwise come. So when we first started our tourist industry back in 1969, one of the jokes that stand-up comedians used to tell was, hey, I got a great idea how to make money on Guam. Yeah, what's that? Start the tourist industry. Everybody laugh. You can't have tourists on Guam. It's too far. Well, of course, we have an extremely successful tourist industry here, and part of it is because we attracted hotels. Yeah, I guess your kids like the merry-go-round too, huh, Fred? Because we attracted those hotels with the QC, so I'm not going to condemn the QC program. Now, on insurance companies, here's the deal on insurance companies. There's something called a captive insurance industry, and here's how it works. Let's say a big company like, say, General Motors wants to start a captive insurance company. They start their own insurance company that insures nothing but their own risks. And then that insurance company reinsures with other companies. And by doing that, General Motors could save a fair amount of money by having its own captive insurance company. In Bermuda, they make millions of dollars by allowing captive insurance companies to set up in Bermuda because of a favorable tax structure. Now, captive insurance companies wouldn't work as well in any of the 50 states because they'd be subject to state and federal taxes. But we were ideally cited for captive insurance because of our qualifying certificate, which, for all practical purposes means no federal or state income tax. So that was the reason that we wanted to have that law for insurance companies. But Ben Pangilinan, in a sense of equality, said, well, if we're going to give off-island insurance companies a break like that, we should do it for our local insurance companies too. And that's what he did. And it made absolutely no sense whatsoever. It didn't attract any new industry to the island. It didn't help anybody but the insurance companies. So I'm not in favor of QCs for insurance companies. That's a long answer, Fred.
So I mean, why don't we just give all businesses that want to open QCs? I think it's fair.
Well, when you start talking about fair, I would tell you fair is something that happens in the fall in rural communities where people bring their animals and produce to show you how good of farmers they are. But we can't give QCs to every business because...
Well, we shouldn't give it to any business. they're all in the business of making profit. Those hotels, those insurance companies making big profit.
Well, if we didn't have QCs and we didn't have any hotels, how would our economy be functioning right now?
I think then in that case, by the same token, no businesses will open because you don't have QCs. If someone wants to do business, they'll do business.
Well,
you don't have to waive the taxes.
People will do business if they think they can make a profit. But you know, for
obviously the Hilton.
Hey, Fred, I'll tell you what, Fred, let's talk, okay? Let's talk. When you want to say something, fine, and I may have something I might want to say. In the beginning, it would have been impossible to attract any hotels to come to Guam without the QCs. Now, whether they've outlived their usefulness, that's another question, and that, you know, I'm not so sure of. But it was a good program, and we wouldn't have a tourist industry now had we not had the QCs. But to say why not give it to everybody? Well, no.
I know. So there should be a time limit on it. I think it's expired. Those hotels have been here long enough.
There are time limits on the QCs.
But it hasn't expired yet.
Well, some of them have expired, and they've applied to have the QCs renewed.
So we shouldn't, obviously.
Well, at least in theory, we have an economic development authority with a board made up of citizens that make the decisions, and we hope they're making wiser decisions than the people down at the Port Authority are making.
Well, they're probably not. If they're approving the QCs still at this moment in time, it's personal favors, I'm sure, going on.
Which
hurt Guam.
Say again?
Which hurt Guam in return, you know.
Say again?
Which hurt Guam.
Well,
if we keep approving QCs.
You know, again, I'm not so sure of that. Let's say, for instance, that let's say that Apple wanted to start a factory here, but they would be able to show us that they couldn't do it without the QC. Would you want to give them a QC?
Of course, but I mean, those hotels and insurance companies have outlived their QC already.
Well,
limit to it.
I'm
Still
with
going
you.
on, though.
I'm with you on the insurance companies. On the hotels, I would have to, right now, in the absence of anything else, I'd have to defer to the judgment of the board over at Gita. If we have something like what happened here at the port, I'd probably be with you.
Well, something we're losing revenue. $65 million a year.
Well, okay, Fred. So I'm glad you raised that issue. It's an important issue, and it's one, of course.
Revenue. We're looking for revenue streams.
Excuse me, Fred.
Yes.
I'm trying to say something here, okay?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I said it's an important issue, and it's the kind of thing that we ought to be talking about here on Tall Tales. So I'm glad you raised the issue. So thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All
okay.
Right. All right. Thanks.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So we could do a whole program on QCs if we had the facts, but I haven't seen anything come out of the Gita board that looks like this port matter. Maybe that's because the Gita guys are much more careful how they go about working out their deals. But I will say this, that the qualifying certificate mechanism that we have is that we're the only place in the United States that can do it. And it has worked to our advantage in a lot of different cases. We've screwed it up in a lot of different cases. But to come out with a blanket rule, no more, or one for everybody, I don't think that would not comport with my idea of good government. Okay, I'm not going to deal with the settler here versus Port Authority ratepayers. It's a good thing because I've got the 7th inning stretch coming up.
Yikes, are those Christmas bills coming in already? Those high-interest credit cards at 16, 18, even 24%? Well, we have a New Year's solution for you. A Bank Pacific personal loan with rates as low as 4.65% to pay off those expensive credit cards. It's easy, it's fast, and it's as low as 4.65% APR.
Bank Pacific, Where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal credit opportunity lender as low as 4.65%. Conditions apply.
From the start of the NFL football season, Point listeners have gotten together in friendly competition to battle it out in the Points NFL Pick'em contest. Along with weekly winners picking up great prizes, we have also awarded our grand prize winner, Art Hameister. Art correctly guessed 170 picks. Wow! Good enough for him to win a new iPhone from GTA. Congratulations, Art. Thanks to all who participated in the Points NFL Pick'em contest. Brought to you by Current Guam with special thanks to GTA.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Try their featured special for January. SD-styled fish tacos. Beer battered, tender fish fillets stuffed in corn tortillas and topped with cilantro lime sour cream sauce, shredded cabbage, and salsa fresca, served with a spicy roasted chili salsa for only $12.95. Try it today. Available in Agotna and in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
Center field bleachers, Wrigley Field, Chicago, 7th inning stretch. That means we got 2 more innings at today's Tall Tales. And I was peeking at the Facebook comments, and irony of ironies. This is what Frenchie says. PNC story on France listing Guam on its blacklist of tax havens. Now, I haven't seen the story, but I know this has come up before, that Guam is a impermissible tax haven, and the explanation given is what I was just talking with Fred about. Our tax abatement scheme that we refer to as qualifying certificates that allows some people to avoid taxes, some businesses to avoid taxes by going through the QC mechanism, and there are various kinds of international rules and treaties, etc., that may or may not have an impact on that program. So it's interesting that Frenchie brings that up right after Fred and I had been talking about the QC program. All right, the next item on the card here is Pacelli versus the Gods and Arrows. And as I mentioned, it's a little bit past time. Oh, if you're into the whole cockfight thing, it's a little bit past time to think you can bluster your way through it, which looks like what Chelsea Munya-Brecht is trying to do, notwithstanding a little bit different approach on behalf of the governor. I've got an article here that this has been on the card for a few days. I've got an article from January 7 from PNC saying Governor Lilian Guerrero says she'll meet with her legal team to work out a response to an animal rights group's call for Gov Guam to stop the illegal import of cockfighting birds from the states. The federal ban on cockfighting took effect last month, but the ban on transporting cockfighting birds across state and territorial lines has been in effect since 2007. So before 2007, some of the states had legal cockfighting, but even then, you couldn't ship cockfighting birds across state lines. The the national government has the ability to regulate shipments in interstate commerce. Animal Wellness Action, that's this guy, Wayne Pacell, claims that records from the Department of Agriculture show that nearly 9,000 game fowl have been shipped to Guam over the past 3 years, and most of them are cockfighting birds. So if it's illegal to ship cockfighting birds across state lines, there have been 9,000 violations of federal law. The group's founder, Wayne Pacell, has asked the Department of Agriculture Director, Chelsea Munia-Brecht, to block the shipments unless the shipper and receiver can prove they're not cockfighting birds. But Munia-Brecht told the Pacific News Center yesterday that since there's been no change in local law, her department would not change its current policy and start to restrict anyone's access to imported birds. Now, that's really kind of interesting, since the governor said, we're going to take a look at this and see what it's all about. Now, as far as local law is concerned, we know that our whole cockfighting mechanism died about 10 years ago. But going back to this article, the governor said, I'll bring it up with my legal people, and then we can talk to Chelsea, and then we can see what is the correct way to deal with this based on federal law. And then the newspaper adds its own editorial comment here. Munia-Brecht's decision not to change the current review policy for imported game fowl is in line with the legislative mandate to make the enforcement of the ban on cockfighting Gov Guam's lowest priority. That sentence doesn't make sense. As lowest priority, to say we're not going to grant permits to allow fighting cocks into the island, even if it is the lowest priority, it doesn't take much. Okay, I got John on the line. Hello, John.
Hey, Bob. Good evening.
Hi.
Hey, I wanted to just make a quick point, and it's kind of a source of frustration for me. You were talking about the importation of cockfighting birds and the Department of Agriculture's stance on it. Well, one of my big frustrations is I have tried to bring a pet parrot, a rescue parrot, to Guam as a pet, and I can't get the damn thing in here. They won't approve it. It's roadblock after roadblock. There's regulations and rules, but yet I can, as you just heard, 9,000 cockfighting birds can be brought to this island. So it's a bit of a frustration because it seems like a double standard. So I'll leave that point there.
Well, let me ask you a couple of questions here, John. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
First of all, when you tried to bring the parrot in, did it sass the Department of Agriculture workers?
We didn't even get that far, but I'm reasonably certain after all of the trials and tribulations that the poor bird went through, it probably would have been, and if you'll pardon the pun, a little foul.
Okay, well, then second question, have you thought about tricking your parrot out to look like a gamecock?
That's a great idea, Bob. I might actually do that. I'll get some razor talons.
Yeah.
And the beak's already pretty good. I'll just paint the beak silver. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and then if a custom inspector comes along to inspect it, kind of poke it in the butt to rile it up a little bit so it seems to be kind of combative. And
I'll teach it. Instead of talking, I'll teach it to crow.
There you go. Yeah, very good. Well, I hope I helped you out a little bit there in that one.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, Bob. Have a great night.
Thank you, John. Yeah, there's more than one way to skin I was going to say more than one way to skin a cock, but that doesn't sound very good either, does it, Real Joe Cruz?
No, sir.
More than one way to skin a cat, I guess it'd probably be a little bit better. Okay, so, if the national government has a law that says it's illegal to import cockfighting birds across state lines, and you have the responsibility of issuing permits for people to import those birds, and you knowingly allow the importation of a cockfighting bird, would you be liable for prosecution? The answer to that question is one that I would not personally want to find out. I wouldn't want to run that risk. And, it's interesting that the governor has taken a pretty responsible approach to this thing from the very beginning instead of joining in the chorus of blustering. Because she called the mayors in and said, hey, you guys, don't ask me for any more cockfight permits for your village fiestas. I'm not going to issue them. It's moot. It's against the federal law. And then with respect to the importation of birds, she said she does a responsible thing. Well, let me see. Let me check with council, and we'll see. Maybe I'll have to talk with Chelsea. But Chelsea's saying, well, there's no law against it here. I'm going to keep doing it. Most interesting. Okay, next on the card is Robert Underwood versus us. And I went into a short description of the superiority of Ifinu Tsumoru to Fino English a few days ago, but I think I'll do it again because it's kind of important for the understanding of the story. In English, we have three persons: first person, second person, third person, singular and plural. So, unfortunately, some of our terms don't inflect for the plural. As an example, for third person singular is he, she, or it. Third person plural is they. That is, unless you're talking to a progressive, then you forget about he, she, it, and everything else, and you use they for everything, much to the confusion of anyone that you're talking to. But you singular, you plural, it's all the same. And the same way with we. This plural of I is we or us. And if we were speaking tomorrow, we has a special inflection, and that is it would inflect so that the we could mean someone who is not in our presence as well as someone who is in our presence. So we'd call that we inclusive and we exclusive. And in Chamorro, the we inclusive is hita, the we exclusive is hame. So Real Joe Cruz, if I said we should go down to Mescla and have dinner tonight, I would be using the inclusive because I'm talking to you and the we includes the two of us. But if I said, Real Joe Cruz, I got so excited by the way you read that Mescla commercial, I'm going to call my wife and I'm going to take her down to Mescla tonight so we could enjoy that food. That would be we exclusive because I'm not talking about you. Hard to believe that I could be saying something here not talking about the Real Joe Cruz, but I would not be talking about you. So it would be in Chamorro, that would be hame. But if I'm talking about you, it would be hita. So you'll see when I finish reading this, going through this article by Robert, it's not hita, it's hame. And I'll leave it to you to figure out who's included and who's excluded in Robert's words. Here it goes. Robert Underwood writes in the defense of Festpac. The recent criticism over giving Festival of the Pacific Arts or Festpac funds really speaks to our values and our essence as a people. When we take, now people, more than one person becomes people, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
You and I are people, right? Yeah. When we take in the full impact of the concerns of the day regarding our healthcare experiences with crimes and priorities of education, we frequently invoke the statement, this is not, quote, who we are. We, is it hita or hame? This is a collective sigh that speaks to who we are as a people, where we are in our development and our core values. So who is the we that Robert is talking about? Is it anybody who picks this up and reads it? Anybody living on the island who reads the Post every day? Or is it we exclusive? It doesn't include. Yeah. Who we are is not subject to a budget vote, although where we put our treasure reflects our values. Who we are is not part of a referendum, although every referendum tells us something about our concerns. Who we are is not just a lesson in civics, although historical memory and contexts tells us something about our essence as a people. Are you with me so far, real Joe Cruz?
Yeah, sure, it's fine.
Are you still running that Hita Hame through, or are you trying to test
I really, sir, I don't.
As we go?
It's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever Robert wants to do is fine.
For a people with a 4,000-year history and more historical firsts than perhaps any other single piece of real estate of 210 square miles, who we are is at once a lament and call to action. Now do you see who we are? Has it become clear to you now? A people with a 4,000-year history. I think 4,000 years ago, my ancestors, my forebears were running around Northern Europe with clubs trying to beat each other into submission. For a people with a 4,000-year history and more historical firsts than perhaps any other single piece of real estate of 210 square miles, who we are is at once a lament and a call to action. Cultural expressions, remembering the past, preserving a unique language are not extras to be considered when we have additional time. They are at the core of determining who we are. Now, of course, having figured out who we are, and having figured out that for me it's Hame, I don't have any trouble determining who I am. Now, maybe I'm the exception here. I know who I am. If I ever had any doubt, I'd pull out my billfold, my wallet, and I'd look at my driver's license, and I'd know who I am. Who we are is a reflection of our historical experience, cultural creativity, you know, like the creativity that caused the Frank Rabone to invent those dances and songs about 30 years ago, and capacity to remember the past. If we don't know who we are, then self-determination means nothing. If we don't know who we are, then discussions over how to manage healthcare and educational opportunity is subject to algorithms rather than core values. Now that's an interesting sentence. How to manage healthcare and educational opportunity is subject to algorithms and not core values. So you could see, healthcare could be the subject of algorithms. I wasn't a math major in my schooling, but I know a little bit more than that about algorithms. Determining our policies becomes an exercise over who is the loudest and most outraged rather than thinking about what is the most fundamental and enduring. Maybe I'll sign up for being the loudest since I got a microphone in front of me here. When it comes to outrage, I don't think I'm in the... I think a lot of people are more outraged than I am about spending all that money to send 100 people to FESPAC. FESPAC is a critical part of that exercise for self-understanding. It isn't the full picture, but it's a central part of it, even as I have personal concerns about some of the expressions. I have been involved in the understanding of cultural issues for almost my entire professional and personal life. I know what it's like to be misunderstood and to be seen as a crazed romantic at best or a social disruptor at worst. Most of all, I know what it's like to be the object of condescension. This is what I've heard for most of my experience. All that you do on behalf of Chamorro people is fine if we have the money. It's okay if we have the time. But most of us have more important things to do than cultural preservation, artistic expressions, strutting around on stage, or speaking a dying language. We're involved in real policy making. Okay, I'm coming up here to the home stretch. I'll take this one right on down through the end of the program. Short break, and we'll come right back to who we are.
Hi, welcome to this ad for new Subway sliders, starting at $1.99 each. How do you want it?
Cheer Squad. Woo! Go Subway sliders, starting at $1.99 each. Woo! Give me a ham and jack slider.
Ham and jack slider.
Give me an Italian spice slider.
Italian spice slider.
What's that spell?
It doesn't really spell anything.
New Subway sliders, starting at $1.99 each. Go Sliders!
Subway, make it what you want.
For you, here's a clue. Advertising, marketing, screening, inspecting, instructing, leasing and signing, collecting and complying, inquiring and assessing, coordinating, repairing, renewing, enforcing, evicting, moving, cleaning, rekeying, communicating. Do it yourself and you'll find it taxing. We work hard to keep the vacancies low, so at the end of the month, you collect the dough. Proven and trusted. Horizon Properties. We do it all. 777-7792.
Talk Tells with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
I just saw something on Facebook that I think I ought to share here before the end of the program. We don't have carpool lanes here, but if you take a vacation, you go to California, you'll find a lot of the freeways have carpool lanes, and you'll see these signs that say HOV 2. And the warning sign tells you that you could use that lane if there are 2 or more people in your car. But if there are 2 people in your car, and a cop catches you, it's a hefty fine. It's probably $450, $500 to be in that carpool lane by yourself. So the story is that a California cop pulled a guy over who was driving in the carpool lane. And the cop said, you know, you're over here in the carpool lane. There has to be more than one person in your car for you to be in this lane. What do you have to say to that? And the driver said, my preferred pronoun is they. Yeah. Very good, Jose Martinez. Thank you for bringing that one up. Okay, so let's see if I got anything else. Frenchie also says, as far as FESPAC sending 100 people to perform fake Chamorro dances based on plagiarism of Hawaiian and Polynesian culture is not only a waste of money, but also a dishonest operation. Wow. And let's see, Rico, I'll get Rico in here on a little different subject. A family has been raising cockfighting roosters pre-ban. They abiding by the law now, but still have the roosters. High school senior who grew up with the roosters considered them as pets. High school senior photo shoot where the student has their favorite things, including the roosters in the photo shoot. Student is told the rooster is not allowed because of the federal ban. Is that restriction legal? No, there's nothing wrong. If you have a fighting rooster right now, it's the fighting of the fighting rooster. And we learned today that the importation of a fighting rooster is also against the law. But if you have one that got here legally and you're not going to fight him, it's probably okay. Okay, back to Robert Underwood and who we are. Cultural activities fill in the gaps in understanding of, quote, who we are. Historical memory and cultural celebrations tell us what trajectory we are on. Cultural expressions reflect our core values. They are the prayer we offer at every meal. They aren't the meal itself, but without the prayer, we may not know where the next meal will come from and why we eat. Our latest experience with FestPac was cathartic for the entire island. Cathartic for the entire island? I am sure there was mismanagement, political excesses, and lots of favoritism. But the lessons it taught a 9-year-old child who experienced it for the first time will contribute more to understanding who we are and solving real problems in the future than the 9-year-olds who never experienced that acceleration and moment of contemplation. Perhaps it's because most adults today never had that moment when they were 9 and fully embrace what it means to be in Guahan, understand its history, and respect its people. Argue about how much to give FastPac, but support it at the end of the day. We have Senator Marsh and Bernard Punzelon. And Senator Marsh wants to come along and set aside, as we're wants to come along and set the record straight on some of the misinformation that's floated around. But according to Robert Underwood here, who's going to pay for it is not important. That's not important at all. Nor is who is it going to benefit, because it's who we are that's really important. Things like the hospital and the schools, some folks would reduce those to mere algorithms. But I have a question here for Robert. What about people that are not concerned with who you are? Or how about people who are very concerned about who you are and other people here on the island, but want to know why it's my responsibility to pay for it? Why it's my responsibility to pay for a boondoggle to send 100 people to Hawaii to find out, quote, who they are. All right, Senator Marsh says it's imperative, or is it Senator Taitano or Senator Kelly? It's always a confusing process. It's imperative that the community is provided with accurate information regarding Guam's participation in the Festival of Pacific Arts, or FestPac. On January 8, a letter to the editor presented the public with inaccurate and misleading information. Misinformation. I write that taxpayers shouldn't fund it when there are so many more serious issues competing for the same fund. I didn't write that letter, but I certainly could. I probably said something like that on the air on January 8th. You know, when our hospital is literally falling down around our ears, do we have $350,000 to send a group of troubadours to Honolulu to find out who they are or who we are? Fact. The funds are not from the general fund. Oh, excuse me, they're not from the general fund. That makes it all okay. Are they public funds, Senator Marsh? Are they public funds? Oh, they're not from the general fund, so that makes it okay. I'll finish this up tomorrow, and I'm sure I have some more interesting, exciting topics upon which to elucidate on tomorrow's issue of Tall Tales. Been good talking to you. Adios.
The Point is KUSG.